Good evening, everyone. I'm Jane Pointer, and welcome to AZ Illustrated Science.
The experience of divorce and time spent living as a divorced adult was associated with this increased risk for early death.
Increasingly, researchers are finding that one's mental state has impacts on one's physical health. Tonight, we will explore that mind-body connection. Also, it is the fastest growing type of identity theft.
If we suspect that there might be any type of fraud occurring, we launch a full investigation, and that is done internally, and we also will contact law enforcement as needed.
We will tell you what medical identity theft is and what you can do to protect yourself from it. And the lifelong implications of childhood trauma. Researchers study the lasting effects of child abuse. But first, here's a look at today's top stories.
The public will have a chance tomorrow night to meet the sole finalists for the superintendent position at the Tucson Unified School District. H.T. Sanchez is the interim superintendent for a school district in Odessa, Texas. He has a Ph.D. in education and teaches at Texas A&M University. The search for a new TUSD superintendent began after John Petticone announced a few months ago he was stepping down. Tomorrow night's meeting is scheduled to begin at 7 at Catalina High School. The legislature didn't make much progress today on the debate over expanding the state's Medicaid system. The House met briefly for a floor session where they passed a handful of bills, but did not bring up the budget or Medicaid. At the end of the floor session, House Speaker Andy Tobin told members they'll next be on the floor Thursday morning, and they should be ready for a marathon session. The budget must be passed by the end of the month, and Governor Brewer says she won't sign any bills until lawmakers take care of that. Meanwhile, Governor Brewer today named former Tucson state lawmaker Ted Vogt the director of the Arizona Department of Veterans Services. Vogt, who served in the Arizona House of Representatives from 2010 to 2013, is also an Air Force vet commanding a 26-person intelligence unit. And that's a look at tonight's headlines.
In any given year, about 1 in 4 Americans will suffer from a diagnosable mental illness. For many of these individuals, the impact of mental illness will reach well beyond the mind. Researchers are discovering connections between mental and physical health that could hold the key to better care and help us all live longer, healthier lives. Gisela Tellis has more on this mind-body connection and what researchers are learning about it.
Sleep problems tend to come out ahead of worsening mood.
For psychologist and Professor David Sabara, it all began with back surgery.
When I was 19, I had a fairly serious spine surgery, and I spent more or less the entire summer lying flat on my back. And I don't know, I really sort of spent a lot of time thinking about how am I going to put the pieces of my life back together? What am I going to do? Who do I want to become? And who am I?
Sabara went on to study what it means, emotionally and physically, to put a life back together. As director of clinical training in the University of Arizona Department of Psychology, he's now part of a new field of research that's changing how people see the connection between physical and mental health. That connection lies at the heart of what Sabara and other experts say is a major and often overlooked public health issue. Right now, almost 60 million Americans, that's 1 out of every 4 adults, are living with some form of mental illness. For many of these individuals, mental illness will carry a physical cost. People with mental health disorders are more likely to have heart disease, diabetes, and other chronic health conditions. On average, they die 25 years earlier than the general population. Researchers are only beginning to explore why, in part by studying how people cope with painful experiences, like losing a loved one.
We know that there is something called the widowhood effect. That is that when a person loses their spouse, they are at increased risk for their own morbidity and mortality, particularly in the first 6 months after the death of their spouse, but even for years to come.
UA psychology researcher Mary Frances O'Connor has spent years trying to figure out why people who have lost loved ones are at greater risk for illnesses ranging from heart disease to multiple sclerosis. She's found that loss can change someone's brain activity and immune and stress responses. Levels of the stress hormone cortisol, for example, follow a specific pattern in healthy people, and a different one when we're grieving.
So this is a graph of the cortisol across the day. This is when they wake up 4 o'clock in the evening and 9 o'clock in the evening. And the two lines look different. You can see that the group with the dotted line, the group who's not adapting, they start lower in the morning in terms of their cortisol level. And when they end, at the end of the day, their cortisol level is still higher, meaning the slope overall is flatter. In the long term, that's not a very good sign for health.
O'Connor uses bereavement as a case study so she can zero in on the link between mind and body. Sabara chose divorce as his case study and has found strikingly similar results.
We did a big meta-analysis, a study a couple years ago, and this involved over 6.5 million people, showing that the experience of divorce and time spent living as a divorced adult was associated with this increased risk for early death.
But when it comes to mental illness, stress-induced changes in the body are only part of the picture, Sabara says.
In general, when we think about the link between psychology and health, you start thinking about 3 or 4 main pathways. And the first one is probably resources. So access to resources. So socioeconomic status, access to health care. In the divorce work, we think about changes in social networks and friend groups and those kinds of things. But the first main one is resources. The second main one is health behaviors. So how much are people smoking? How good is their diet? How poor is their diet? And then those types of things. So sleeping, all the like. Then we move on to think about psychosocial stress. So how much psychological stress does any given experience confer? How much psychological stress are people under who have mental health problems? And you start putting those all together and you weave a pretty complex story about the thing that increases risk for early death.
Current treatments for mental illness are also part of the problem. Many of the medications people take to ease their symptoms, while helpful in day-to-day life, can have long-term consequences for physical health. And then there's the fact that the mind-body connection goes both ways. Studies of the link between depression and heart disease, for example, suggest that both conditions may share a common origin in inflammation.
It may well be the case, and I think we're going to really see this in the next 5 or 10 years, that a lot of the psychology is driven from the bottom up, that the inflammatory response leads to social withdrawal and sort of organizes that kind of psychosocial response. So what we're seeing is sort of this breakdown between how people think about what's driving the engine between psychology and biology. And that's probably some of the most interesting research that's being done.
Sabara and O'Connor admit there's still a lot they and their colleagues don't know about the connection between mental and physical health. But they plan to keep probing in hopes that learning more could lead to a new approach for treating mental illnesses, one that aims to heal the body as well as the mind.
Childhood trauma can take a toll on health throughout one's life. That is what researchers do know. Now they are finding ways to actually measure this lifelong effect in hopes of developing new ways to heal. In this next segment, Tony Paniagua sat down with Dr. Charles Raison, a University of Arizona Associate Professor of Psychiatry, to discuss some of the ongoing impacts of childhood trauma and some of what researchers know and don't know about it and its effects.
People can survive trauma as children, but when they become adults, they often experience addiction and other major problems.
Absolutely. So I think one of the most consistent findings in the world of neuroscience and health research in the last decade has been that, on average, when humans as children are exposed to not just trauma, but also neglect, we call it early adversity. So if childhoods that are full of adversity, that does something to people's brains and bodies that sets them up for a lifetime of trouble. And we know in addiction, it's very clear, there's a big, big link between having a lot of trouble in childhood and having increased risk for addiction as an adult, over and above any genetic risk factors you may have. You see it in animals. So if animals are exposed to adversity early in life, they're much more likely to develop addiction problems in studies. So it does something to the brain that makes people vulnerable to addiction.
And not only the brain, but also the body is impacted. We were talking about that, different things can happen to the body.
Yeah. So it's estimated that on average in the Western world, early adversity decreases people's lifespan by about 10 years. So it's not so different than something like smoking, actually. It is a major, major health problem. And it doesn't just affect the brain. You're right. We know now from studies in humans and from a lot of studies in animals that exposure to significant adversity early in life programs the brain and the body to operate in ways that cause damage over time, right? So we know, for instance, that early adversity ages people's cells. We know that it causes people to run their stress system too high and their inflammatory system too high. And these chemicals, although they help people survive real acute dangers, over time, if they're chronically elevated, they begin to destroy the tissues of the body and the brain. So you can see that, for instance, early adversity causes people's brains to shrink. It causes damage to the vasculature, so people are at increased risk of heart attacks and strokes. Probably increases the risk for cancer. Definitely, massively increases the risk for diabetes and obesity. All of which, again, contribute to the fact that it shortens people's lives on average.
And we were speaking ahead of this interview that it's also been showing impacts on genes, people's genes and perhaps their children's genes as well.
Yeah, so all of us are born with a complement of genes. We all come with a certain form of genes, and barring things like random mutations, the forms of your genes can't change. But a gene is only as good as how much it's expressed or not expressed, and the expression of genes turns out to be powerfully modulated by experience, especially early life experience. So, a little mammal, a little human is born into the world. He or she looks around, samples what the world is like, and sets how the body is going to operate, and that's done by how the genes are expressed. That setting of how the genes is expressed has now been shown in animal studies to be inheritable, just like regular genes. So we now know in animals at least that trauma in a grandparent can actually change how the genes are expressed in a grandchild. So trauma has a long, long half-life that probably extends beyond the person that was actually traumatized, which greatly increases the urgency with which we need to try to reduce traumatic things for people, especially in childhood.
And what about developing new ways to help and heal people? We were speaking just a few seconds ago about an interesting one dealing with meditation.
Yeah. So we, recognizing this a number of years ago, began a series of studies looking to see whether or not training adults in a type of meditation called compassion meditation could turn down these hyperactive stress system and inflammatory responses that produce not only depression, but we think a lot of the physical damages that occur in people that are traumatized as children. And we've shown that indeed you can turn down these types of responses if people learn to sort of retrain their brains to look at the world more compassionately, to feel less threatened. We've also shown that actually in foster children. So teenagers who had undergone horrific trauma, by practicing a meditation like this, it would actually turn down these damaging stress and immune chemicals.
And there was a famous person in American history that you wanted to talk about where you can
many.
show, many, we'll talk about one, who had trauma as a child and became quite successful.
Yeah, so we were talking about it. So take Eleanor Roosevelt, right, who is somebody that I admire greatly. She started the many things in the United Nations, the human rights, International Code of Human Rights. She had a really horrible childhood. Her father was a raging alcoholic. He was profoundly neglectful. There's just tragic stories about how he would abandon her. And she had struggles in her life, and she had some struggles, I think, being a mom. But you look at what she did and how she took that pain and transformed it into something that benefited our whole country. It's very, very moving. Many, many great people have a lot of trauma in their childhood, and there's something that we don't quite understand that clicks in that causes them to be not just normal, but really almost super normal.
All right, Dr. Raison, a fascinating topic.
Yeah,
Thanks for being here.
Oh, my pleasure.
U.S. lawmakers call today for Edward Snowden, the man behind the leak of classified government surveillance programs, to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law.
We get two takes on the NSA story. First, we examine how the intelligence community's reliance on contractors may put top secret information at risk.
Then Google is the first tech giant to respond on camera about its role in the PRISM program. Jeffrey Brown talks to the company's chief counsel.
We do not participate in any kind of a program that gives the government any access to our servers, direct or otherwise, nor do we allow the government to place any kind of equipment on our systems.
We update the fight over contraception as the Justice Department reverses its position and allows the morning after pill to be sold over the counter to women and girls.
We continue our series on food security with a report from Qatar on innovative ways to use limited amounts of water to support a booming population.
The technologies that we're developing here can be applied anywhere that is a desert with a hot and relatively dry climate and where you have access to salty water.
And Ray Suarez has the story of two terminally ill children and the battle between doctors and judges over whether they should be eligible to receive adult lungs.
That's all ahead on tonight's NewsHour.
When America's first astronauts were introduced in 1959, they'd been thoroughly vetted, but their wives?
The FBI came knocking on their friends' and neighbors' doors, asking, does she cook home-cooked meals? Does she drink too much? Are their kids well-dressed?
The true story of the Astronaut Wives Club on the next morning edition from NPR News.
We now continue tonight's focus on the connection between mental and physical health. Dr. Esther Sternberg is a professor of medicine and the director of research at the University of Arizona Center for Integrative Medicine. She uses neurobiology to study the connections between health and emotions. Her work also stresses the way that places can have power to heal. So for thousands of years, I'm just going to dive straight into it if you're okay with that. For
Absolutely.
Thousands of years, people have visited locations that they have considered sacred for their healing power. And now I understand that your research, Dr. Sternberg, is really demonstrating that there's some real science behind this.
Absolutely. In fact, you have one of those sacred places here at Tumamoc Hill that for 3,500 years has been lived in by the Native American peoples and then was taken over afterwards as a sacred shrine. It's very much like your local Guatemala, or Guadalupe or Lourdes right here in Tucson. So the question that we're asking is, what is it about places like that that can help you heal? Actually, step back, can they help you heal? And in my book, Healing Spaces, The Science of Place and Well-Being, I explore that question. And there's a tremendous amount of neuroscience now, immunology, molecular biology, environmental psychology that does answer that question and tells us how places like that can help you heal. And in fact, how much they can help you heal. And so it's, it's very exciting. It's actually really exciting for me to be here at the University of Arizona at the Center for Integrative Medicine and working with the College of Architecture and Planning and Landscape Architecture and the Institute on the Environment. Across the university, scientists who are interested in addressing these questions in a rigorous scientific way.
So you're saying that there's actually physiological responses or something like that that is occurring within certain locations that don't happen in others?
There are physiological, emotional, and immune responses that are occurring in every location that you're in at every moment of the day. So the mind-body connection goes way beyond here and here. It goes to the physical world. And we know that. We know that from studies in animals. We know in animal research, when you're doing research for whatever reason, you have to control the environment very, very carefully. The light, the sound, the colors, the textures, because animals respond instantly to all of those physical features of the environment. Humans respond equally. They also respond to memories that are triggered by those kinds of physical features of the environment. And those memories can trigger either positive emotions, which can ultimately, by the nerve chemicals and hormones that are released, affect the immune system and help you heal, or they can trigger negative emotions, stress, anxiety, fear, that also affect the immune system and harm it and prevent it from doing its job of healing.
So this has enormous ramifications.
It has tremendous ramifications, yes.
Societal, I mean, not only for those people that are trying to heal themselves from something, but also in everyday life as we're walking from one place to another.
Absolutely. It has bearing on the physical, on the built environment, on your home, on your schools, on your offices, on the green environment, on the urban environment. And what we're doing, actually working together with the American Institute of Architects, the U.S. Green Building Council, the General Services Administration that builds all the buildings for the government, even the Vatican and the military are interested in this because they understand how important it is to help people heal by designing physical space and putting people's health front and center when you're doing green building design, for example. So I got into this field specifically when the then Director of Research for the General Services Administration and the Director of Research for the American Institute of Architects asked me if there was a way that we could measure the physiological and health and emotional responses of people to their built environment. And we got together a group of researchers. I was at the National Institutes of Health at the time. And we got together a group of researchers to develop non-invasive methods to measure those kinds of responses. Because it doesn't do if you're measuring those responses in an office worker to stick a needle in them and draw blood. Bringing all that here to the Arizona Center for Integrative Medicine, it's the same kind of technology, it's the same kind of toolkit, non-invasive toolkit that we're developing to measure those kinds of responses in response to mind-body interventions like meditation and Tai Chi and so on.
Well, I'd like to thank you so much for coming in this evening. I'm sorry we have to leave it there, but thank you again for coming.
Thank you.
Healthcare fraud costs the country about $80 billion each year. That, according to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, which is charged with tracking down the individuals who commit these kinds of crimes. One type of healthcare fraud, according to the FBI, is medical identity theft, and it is on the rise. In fact, medical ID theft has become so prominent that hospitals, clinics, and other medical institutions are taking extra steps to protect themselves and you from identity thieves. Georgia Davis explores this growing type of fraud and gives some tips for protecting yourself from this crime.
Medical ID theft. You may not have heard of it, but it can be just as damaging to your finances as identity theft.
Some things that we see are patients coming in trying to use other family members' identifications or health insurance cards, or randomly we will also see people who are just trying to use other people in the community's information for health insurance reasons.
Why is this important to you? For one, it can affect the way your doctor treats you in the future.
If we have somebody coming in potentially pretending to be somebody else, it can have an effect on the patient's medical record and treatment. So that would affect both the hospital as well as them. And if we have fraudulent claims, we're not going to get paid for them if we're submitting fraudulent claims.
Such claims can also hit you in your pocketbook, limiting your ability to get insurance benefits. Not to mention, when a scammer incurs unpaid medical debts, those can show up on your credit report. And it can cause you legal troubles. For example, if a thief uses your identity to buy prescription drugs to sell or feed a personal addiction. Medical ID theft affects more than 1 million people in the United States each year. Because of the size of the problem, hospitals, insurance companies, and other medical establishments now have official policies to protect against medical ID theft.
We always ask for a valid government-issued identification, as well as a copy of an insurance card so that we can verify that the patient is who they say they are. We have policies and procedures in place that if we suspect that there might be any type of fraud occurring, we launch a full investigation, and that is done internally, and we also will contact law enforcement as needed.
The University of Arizona Medical Center will notify patients when it discovers a case of medical ID theft, but sometimes a victim only finds out once a bill arrives in the mail.
People can be really vigilant about when they receive notifications in the mail from their insurance companies, looking at an explanation of benefits, and people might say, you know, I've never been to that hospital, I've never had any type of this medical care completed, I don't understand why I'm getting this in the mail, that they should immediately contact their insurance company and make sure that they're aware that it is not them who seek medical treatment.
Experts offer some other tips for protecting yourself from medical ID theft. Do not store medical records in your purse or other vulnerable location. Use secure websites and email servers to store and send medical documents. Shred all insurance forms, prescriptions, or health documents you plan to throw away. And be careful not to post sensitive information to a listserv or other online health support group. One other possibility is to store all of your records electronically on a HIPAA-approved site. Global Online Personal Health Resources, or GOPHR, is one such site. Individuals can gather, organize, and store all of their health information in one secure location.
That includes contact information, that includes medications and allergies. It includes digital files such as MRIs and X-rays, image files, and a whole host of other features such as fitness journals, nutrition journals, a diabetes tracker, a vitals tracker.
Users can choose who gets access to this information. For example, they can allow their doctors to upload documents and to review information on the site. Also, critical care personnel such as EMTs and emergency room doctors can have limited access.
Things like asthma, epilepsy, if you have a heart stent, you can't have an MRI, obviously, if you have metal inside you. But things like AIDS, they didn't need to know. It's not crucial in a life-saving situation.
Sites such as GOPHR not only help people to manage their medical records, they help them take control of their health.
It's like a person who has organized financial records usually enjoys better financial health, as opposed to the person who throws a bunch of receipts in a shoebox and hands them to the accountant. They don't know what's happening. And it's the same kind of thing.
And instead of storing all of the data in a purse or in a file drawer at home where it can easily be stolen, it's all kept in a secure place.
Edgeneering, the company that we contracted with up in Scottsdale, are data storage specialists. And in fact, they've done a lot of work. They hold a lot of Maricopa County's records, official records. They've done work with the Department of Defense. And they're cyber forensic consultants for the CIA. So they construct data storage systems that, to explain it in a way that I can understand it, basically they create military-grade firewalls.
And one final piece of advice, be patient. One reason you are asked to present your health insurance card again and again is to protect against medical ID theft.
People get frustrated sometimes that if you come in for a visit and then you come back 3 days later for a follow-up, that they ask you for the insurance and the identification one more time, but it really is to ensure that we have safe practices and we are maintaining people's safety and security.
According to Nationwide Insurance, the street value of a stolen medical identity is 50 times that of a stolen Social Security number. For that reason, medical ID theft is the fastest growing type of identity theft, so it pays to pay attention and to not assume that your medical records are safe or correct.
That's our show. To post a comment on any of these stories or to keep up with the latest news, go online to our website at azpm.org. I'm Jane Pointer. Thanks for watching.